You're listening to the Screaming Pods Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
We interrupt this program to give you a bulletin just received from one of our naval units at sea.
Hello, what have we here?
My God, it's full of stars.
Xenopod from the year 5000.
Welcome to Xenopod from the year 5000. I am your host, Sean DeRager. With me today, very excited that this finally worked out, Anya Stanley joins us.
Hello, glad to be here.
We have been toiling.
Months in the making.
We have been toiling to get this meetup to happen. And today we are talking about Fire in the Sky from the year 1993.
Yeah, it's a good one. I think the reason I'm on this podcast is because I made a thread about how this movie just absolutely wrecked me when I was a kid. I saw it long before I was supposed to see it. And so I'm hoping that after listening to this podcast, you're going to watch it and you're going to be similarly wrecked as well.
Yes. It is a fantastic alien abduction film, and it's directed by Robert Lieberman. We're going to jump into it in a little bit, but Anya, first, I know you're huge into the horror films, and I'm wondering if you had a similar affection for science fiction or kind of what you dabbled in as little young Anya.
As little young Anya, my mom, Stacy, she was and is a huge nerd. She was and is a Trekker, and so I grew up watching Star Trek: The Next Generation, and
fantastic.
Right, and so I remember her sewing her own Starfleet uniform for a convention back in the early '90s, and she's always been kind of a huge sci-fi nerd, and she was also the one who got me into horror as well. Okay. But I would watch that with her. I'd watch old episodes of Dark Shadows with her. I would watch, Dark Shadows is horror, not sci-fi. And then as a kid, probably before I was old enough to properly watch it, I sat down with my dad and watched Planet of the Apes, the original. And well, I don't know if that counts as sci-fi.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Planet of the Apes definitely is science fiction. That's what's great. I've talked about this before on the podcast. I love how varied science fiction is, and sometimes there's a lot of cross-pollination between different genres with science fiction, and kind of the same thing with horror. I think they're both kind of genres that do cross-pollinate a lot with other types of film.
Yeah, definitely, and I think Planet of the Apes is one of those that kind of veers into adventure, it veers into dystopia. And so, I think that Planet of the Apes was one of the earlier ones. When I was a kid, my dad at one point rented, I want to say it was like the first 4 Planet of the Apes movies, and we had a marathon over a weekend. I remember eating Planters cheese balls, and drinking Kool-Aid, and it was like this huge treat to be able to sit with my dad and watch the Planet of the Apes movies, and talk about the underlying themes of them. Mm-hmm. And this, I was maybe 7, 8 years old, far too young to be thinking about that kind of thing. And a little bit after that, I believe he showed me Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Ooh.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was on TV or if we rented it. But that was another big one that got me into hard sci-fi.
Yeah. So what would you say your favorite kind of subgenre of science fiction? Because you were like Fire in the Sky. You are raising a flag high, as you should, for that film. Do you kind of gravitate more towards the alien abduction because they kind of toe the line with horror, or is there any specific kind of subgenre of science fiction that you kind of gravitate to?
I think I like satirical sci-fi, like blatantly satirical sci-fi, like Starship Troopers and Ender's Game, stuff like that. And I like anything that You know what? I'm actually really into wastelands in general, as far as an aesthetic. And so like Dune was huge for me as a kid. I
love Dune. I never, whenever people bring up like the hate for Dune, I'm always like, why? Like that movie looks amazing. The cast is amazing. Like,
I know. I thought that my boyfriend was not into Dune. Like it's his least favorite Lynch film. And I was just like, it's a good thing you told me like a year into dating, because I don't know. I don't know about that.
That's the one thing I guess we'll have to forgive.
But yeah, definitely more of an aesthetic than an actual theme in films is wastelands and the idea of scavenging for everything that you have and trying to find humanity within any kind of land that won't allow for that anymore.
So let's jump into today's film. So like I said, 1993's Fire in the Sky.
How does it think? What makes it move? Why does it breathe? Questions anyone would ask about a man if they'd never seen one before. So for 5 days, a man was borrowed. The story that Travis Walton and 5 other witnesses told was so unbelievable, so unimaginable, that it has become the most famous case of UFO abduction ever reported.
Directed by Robert Lieberman. He's done a lot of science fiction. He's done a lot of like TV series, Expanse, X-Files, and things like that. I'm trying to see like if there's anything like major that he did that I can talk about, but he didn't really do a whole lot of like film. Like he did like D3, The Mighty Ducks.
He did D3, yeah.
But a lot of television, which is very interesting because I feel like Fire in the Sky does feel a bit like it could be like a television, I guess, made for TV film in a way.
Sure, yeah. It's got heavy melodrama to it. Exactly.
So it's where a large part of the film is this melodrama between these what are they, lumber whatever, I don't even know the name of what you would call them. They're
like loggers?
Loggers. I was gonna say lumberjacks, but I don't know if anyone uses the term lumberjack anymore.
I know. Is that like offensive, or is it outdated?
I don't want to offend any loggers out there talking about their profession. But this film in particular, I remember when this came out because 1993. So I was trying to place myself. I was living in small town Iowa, which when you're in small town Iowa, you look up at the sky, you definitely can think that something's going to come down and take you out. You know, it's one of those things where the sky is just so big and there's no lights out in the country and just you see everything in the sky. So this film came out.
So you've got full immersion.
Yeah, exactly. It was a few years before I graduated, so I had to have been like a freshman or sophomore, I guess, in high school when this came out. And it came out on VHS, of course. And what I would do when I'd go to the video store is, at the time, I wouldn't recommend this anymore, but back then, when there wasn't the internet and Twitter, Facebook, and all these, just a shit ton of critics, oversaturation, I think, of everyone kind of throwing out their opinion, they would have, like, on the box, like, it would say, 4 stars or whatever, and it would have, like, a positive blurb. And when a movie had that, for the most part, with my luck with renting, if the movie had at least one little positive blurb on there, I knew it would be decent.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I know what you mean.
So when I'd be browsing, I knew that if there was nothing on the cover at all, I was like, ooh, this thing is going to be, it's up in the air. I have no idea. Because I couldn't just go search and see if this is good. Now I just go to my phone, I'll search something up if I'm browsing around, So I saw this had like 4 stars. I was like, oh, wow. So I took it home and I watched it. And I'm trying to think. I had done some reading on it. So there had to have been like early phases of internet had to have been in 93. I can't remember. But I remember I did do some reading up on it, and everyone was talking about that alien abduction scene. So I was like, all right, I got to see this. So, of course, I took it home and I watched it by myself. And I just really, at the time, like, loved the film. As it was like, when it finished, I was like, now that's a science fiction film. It's like, that's so good. And I want to talk more about like my, reactions as on rewatch. But when did you talked a little bit about when you first saw it? What was did you say you watched it with your mom?
I did. I was 8 when this came out. And I think that, I know, that's why I was like, when you were in high school when it came out. Oh,
I'm
man.
old.
I know. So,
old man.
my mom had the movie on, but I don't remember whether it was rented from the video store or whether it was on TV. I know I was out of school for the summer. I was just putting around doing dumb kid stuff, and I see this weird looking movie on TV, and my mom just kind of pats the couch beside her and she invites me to sit and watch with her, which she often did. That's how I saw like Dark Shadows. I think I saw the original It movie that way. I watched a lot of horror movies that way, just sitting on the couch with her. And I sat down with her and watched it. And it was kind of funny, the calm with which my mom wrecked her daughter's psyche with that movie was just, I mean, to be fair, I always had leanings towards like macabre and weird stuff. But I think in her mind I could handle this because at the time I was reading like Alvin Schwartz's scary stories to read in the dark and Goosebumps and stuff like that. But no like R.L. Stine story could have prepared me for the abduction scene that we're going to discuss later. It jacked me up proper. I had nightmares for weeks. But it was the film, watching the film with her was like a gateway into more morbid stuff. I definitely remember picking up her hardback copy of Stephen King's Skeleton Crew after that and reading that. And then I went with my dad to the video store and I watched Creepshow.
Yeah.
I think after Creepshow, I think I rented Dr. Giggles. I am amazed that he let me rent that. But yeah, it was that. And then I think The Boys from Brazil, which isn't horror, but it's definitely, it's messed up Nazis doing like scientific experiments and stuff like that. So yeah, it was definitely a gateway horror film for me. I started watching Monster Vision after that, and that was so Fire of the Sky. Actually, I credit that heavily towards my being a horror fan today. Actually,
yeah. I mean, it's definitely. I need to watch this with my daughter because she's 13, so she's kind of budding into a little horror fan herself and science fiction like genre. She's definitely growing into a genre fan, and she appreciates like the nuance of the films and the scares and just the macabre things. And it's so funny because when you meet her, she just looks like this nice little innocent thing, but she has this like she's like me where she's drawn to the the like I love the word macabre. I've always loved that word.
I know. I like just saying
creepy. Yeah, it's great. I used to have a little comic strip back in college called Macabre High about monsters in high school. I need to bring that back.
You should.
I know, huh?
Especially for your daughter. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'll turn it over to her and she can run with it. But no, like Fire in the Sky definitely is. It would be on my list for kind of gateway films if you're a parent trying to kind of guide your child into this stuff because that's kind of the fun of being like a parent who's into genre films and things like that. Like it's fun to kind of guide our kids, and you've been doing that with your oldest, with these the makeup and the things like that. It's really cool. Fun to see other parents kind of doing that too.
Right, yeah, you're not the only one that's probably on a list somewhere for showing their kids horror movies.
Yeah, we're fine. It's okay. But I wanted to jump in before, so I want to talk kind of, we'll dissect this movie a little more from kind of a rewatch point of view. I rewatched it recently, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the true story, and that's what's great about this film. It's one of those based on a true story movies, and so it's based off a book written by Travis Walton, and he is the guy who does get taken in this film. And the real story is, back in 1975, he was out with his buddies. They were tree thinning contractors. That's the actual term.
Yes.
So yeah, the real story is that this guy, Travis Walton, disappeared in the forest when he was working with his crew, and his friends searched for about 20 minutes or whatever. They couldn't find anything. They went back to town, told the police, and then they go from there where he shows up, and the film itself, I guess, takes a lot of liberties with Travis Walton's actual story, because it wasn't as fucked up or scary as you can do with the film. A little more it was a little like, I guess, procedural, like medical experiment procedural, like nothing, really, really crazy. And they all, I guess, did take lie detector tests, and those tests came back as like inconclusive. But the film itself, I guess, does take a lot of liberties. Did you read anything about the real story with Travis Walton?
I did read that they later took a second set of polygraph tests, which they did pass. Those loggers. But I did not read the original book. I have heard from other people who have read the book that, yeah, they take some serious liberties, as you said. But, that's Hollywood. That's what they do.
Yeah, exactly. And he, I think the book is called The Walton Experience. And so it's kind of, so it's kind of one of those things where people are like, well, did he just kind of fabricate this to make some money? Because it has helped, like he did make basically a career out of this.
Right.
And I guess just recently he did some consultant work on a film. I'm not sure which film. I wish I had that pulled up here, but I just saw that like yesterday when I was searching around online. He's been doing like consulting work on different kind of UFO and science fiction films. So it has butted into a little career for him. So, but we'll never know. And that's what's kind of fun about all this.
It is. It's one of those based on true event stories that takes a huge creative license with its most sensational moments. Although I feel like upon revisiting the movie, I don't know if are we going to talk about
we'll move, we're definitely going to move into that now for sure.
Without spoiling anything for those who haven't seen it, I feel like the story kind of peters out a bit, and I feel like if you're going to take such great liberties with the original story, you could embellish the end a little bit instead of kind of making the denouement so floppy. It kind of just it didn't really conclude in a way that I found satisfying.
Right. Yeah. No, I can definitely see that. So let's run down the cast a little bit because there's some faces in here that I like. I mean, Robert Patrick is basically one of the leads in it. D.B. Sweeney plays Travis Walton. I think he does a great job. Very believable. Peter Berg is in this. Now, I want to just talk a little bit about Peter Berg because I actually think this is possibly his strongest performance in a film. Because he always kind of has, he's went to be more of a director. He shows up every now and then in the films he directs. But have you? And of course, most notably, he's known for oh gosh, what is it? Shocker?
Oh yeah, Shocker. Okay. I had the stuff that the actors had all been in, but Peter Berg's was missing, and so I had nothing in parentheses next to his name on my notes, and I was like, oh man, that name sounds familiar, but I couldn't. As soon as you said Shocker, I got it. Okay, yeah.
Oh, there you go. But he's because Shocker, it's very campy, very campy film. I'm double checking to make sure he was in Shocker. I'm pretty sure he was. Yeah, he was in Shocker.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. All right. Here we go.
But the whole cast, it's an all-star, like a murderer's row of character actors in this film. really before, now we recognize all of them as character actors, but before they would just, I don't know how well known they were at the time as character actors.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, like Robert Patrick, definitely, but some of the other ones I'm not so sure. Like maybe not Henry Thomas. He was still kind of a greenhorn. I mean, he had been Elliot in E.T., right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then prior to Fire in the Sky.
In the 80s, is a child actor who's in Cloak and Dagger, which is a fantastic little film there. But yeah, E.T., just a lot of stuff as a kid. But I don't, I know around this time, he didn't really do anything. Because he must have gone to school, finished school and everything, and then in the early 90s he started appearing, like around 92 he started appearing in more and more things, and Fire in the Sky was kind of the first film he'd been in a few years, like an actual kind of a major role, and then after that, of course, he moves into more bigger and bigger things. Let's see, what was the big one I just saw? I can't see it now. It's the worst. This is where I got to edit right here. Stupid stuff. Where'd it go? Anyway, so he started, getting more roles. He was in Legends of the Fall. He was Suicide Kings. That's what I was thinking of. Suicide Kings. Things like that.
Legends of the Fall. I haven't seen that in ages. That was such a nice movie.
But he still is one of those actors, though. He still is, even though he was a big star in the 80s or in these big films, he still did settle into kind of a character actor mode. I mean, Dead Birds and then a lot of TV and things like that. He never really got into leading man roles. Have you seen, he was in Gerald's Game. Have you seen Gerald's Game? I haven't watched it.
He was, oh gosh, his character in Gerald's Game was, oh boy. Yeah, he was in Gerald's Game.
Would you consider that more of like a kind of a character actor role for him?
I guess not. I mean,
okay.
That was.
I haven't seen it, so it's
different.
one of those things I need to watch. It's one of those movies that I'm like, am I in the mood to watch this?
You know what? And Gerald's Game is one of those movies where you kind of got to be in the mood to sit through it. It's not bad. It's a great adaptation, but it's just, it's like listening to Nirvana or The Doors. You have to be in the mood for it.
Yeah. It took me forever I couldn't get myself to go to the theater to see Hereditary, and then it came out and I was like, okay, it's home and it's in my house now. I need to watch this thing. But I'm very weird with movies that I know are going to be a little intense. I'm like, do I want to sit through a theater and be intense in a theater with strangers? I don't know. So, all right.
But you liked Hereditary too.
Oh my God. Hereditary scared the shit out of me. I loved it. It's fantastic. And that's high praise. And of course, some people will be like, well, I don't get scared, but for me, this is a sci-fi podcast. We're talking a little bit about Hereditary really quick because we're just all about these little rabbit trails. Hereditary kind of had that impending sense of dread all the way through it. And on a personal note, as someone who's experienced grief in a family, it nailed those notes so much. I was kind of getting flashbacks to 10 years back when our family went through some really heavy shit. And so if a filmmaker can capture that and kind of put it into a movie right on and you can bring someone back to that, that's some craftsmanship right there. And then it gets a little bit batshit towards the end, which is always great with cults and batshitness and
batshitness. That's the best way to describe the third act of that movie.
Welcome that, because it is kind of a release on, okay, we're going a little more crazy here, but it's fantastic. Anyway, mini review of Hereditary in our Fire in the Sky discussion. That's what happens when you get two horror fans trying to talk about science fiction and we're going to go off.
Yeah, it's going to happen. Somehow I'm going to get Halloween 6 mentioned in here. Other than just now.
Right. There's got to be an organic way of bringing that in. We'll have to try
exactly.
That. So other actors in here, James Garner is in it, and he is the, Podunk Town sheriff. He is great. I think this is one of my favorite roles of his. I love James Garner. Whenever he shows up, I'm like, man, it's just James. He just has that cool grandpa-y swagger. you know, like
Grandpa, you swag.
Just a nice guy, you know, you know.
Yeah, and especially in any kind of position of authority.
Mm-hmm.
As he is.
He rules with a steady hand, kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of a sheriff there in town. And he's trying to get to the bottom of it. He's like, okay, so these guys were trimming trees and they lost their friend. I don't really believe them. So, we're not going to rehash the whole plot, but let's talk about some of the things that we really did love about the film. I love, so this takes place in 1975. And for me, I think they did a great job of really kind of putting you there in this small town, Snowflake, Arizona, in 1975. You're in these dirty, kind of grungy bars. It feels like the clothing, everything about it, just even the hair and makeup. I felt like I was in 1975. And a lot of times when films try to do the period thing, it's a lot of times a hit or miss, especially on lower budget. But this thing I felt really nailed the feel of the time. What did you think about that?
I did. I like. Now I wasn't around in 1975, but
based on pictures I saw of like my parents in 1975.
Yeah, based on some outside knowledge there. I feel like I do like the scene setting that they did outside of the alien ship, and I liked the small town feel, because I feel like that's something that can be easily messed up, is the small town feel. Mm-hmm. Now you'd probably have a better perspective on that, because I grew up in Southern California, like in San Diego and Poway. There are no small towns down there.
No, so I grew up in Garner, Iowa. Is where when I was 10 was relocated to from the Bay Area, California. Was thrust into small town life, and yes, definitely this film nails that, because when you're in a small town, like everyone knows everybody. You can't get away. I remember working at the grocery store, and I saw everybody like every day. I would see almost the entire town. I would see every single one of my friends' parents. My friends would come in. It's just you would see everybody every single day, and that has its charms, but it also has its drawbacks, especially when there's deep, dark secrets kind of underneath, and you kind of learn something about somebody, and all that just kind of hovers there. And I feel like they really do get this feel in this town, because each of these guys kind of has their own thing. They're known for different things. So we got D.B. Sweeney's character is dating Robert Patrick character, his character Mike Rogers. Dating his is it his sister who's living in their house?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's his sister.
So you have that kind of tension there of these two guys. You have there's the one bad boy guy. Which one was he? I can't remember their names, but you get the one bad boy that everyone knows. That's just the Drifter, but everyone kind of.
Was that Craig Sheffer's character? Alan Dallas.
I think so. Yes, I'm trying to.
The only one we hadn't mentioned yet. Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone, you may not be around, or the people may not know someone very well, but this town is small enough that word travels fast about people, and you get that. You get that in the bar. You get that when James Garner's character comes in to interview them, and definitely there's some skepticism because of basically this ragtag group of tree trimmers, their previous, I guess, reputation, in the town. So it makes sense that they would kind of be treated, I guess, a little bit skeptically when all this happens, especially because there's tension between Craig Sheffer's character and the Travis Walton character. There's that. So they're like, did shit go down? Are they covering for him? Was Travis Walton murdered? Like, are they all covering it up? And so that original scene. So we've mentioned. Okay, so Travis Walton does get abducted. And what did you think about that scene when they see the fire? They see the fire in the sky, is in the title. And Travis Walton walks towards the light, and things go from there. How do you think that was executed? I think it's one of my favorite parts of the film, and I kind of think it really sets things up nicely with everything.
from what I recall, this was the scene that I walked in on when my mom
really
allowed me to. It was like just before that when they were driving home from work. So right at the beginning of the movie, basically. And Walton gets out of the truck and he gets struck by that bright beam of light, and just that shot of him being struck by the beam. Yeah. That terrified me as a kid. Iconic. But I wasn't about to get up from that couch. I keep watching. I'm no punk. And so, and then he flies like several feet backwards. And that was something that I had never seen before in a movie. Mm-hmm. Mind you, I was 8. So, of course I hadn't seen anything like that. But that was utterly terrifying that, basically light and some kind of unseen energy could knock you back like that. And there was so much tension in that scene right from the get-go. Mm-hmm. That was the moments after the credits. And then, as I recall, they think in their minds, he just died. He's dead. Right. He's gone. And they take off. They don't even go back for their buddy.
Yeah, they're not going to hang around and see what the hell did that. They're out of there.
They're gone. And if I were him, I'd be pretty offended about that. But, it is what it is. They thought he was gone. They left. And so, from what I remember, one of them goes back. Mm-hmm. I think it's Robert Patrick's character, Mike Rogers. He goes back, and but obviously Walton's nowhere to be found because he's occupied elsewhere. And so that initial abduction scene is, for me, it was absolutely jarring to watch, and for someone who had previously read a couple of Goosebumps books, read some Scary Stories in the Dark, that was. We didn't say this back in 1992 or 1993, but I was shook as a kid.
Hell yeah. And it still is a really effective film, really effective scene. And especially for me, so I was a child of the 80s. I saw a lot of Spielberg growing up. It was that was my film school was, Spielberg and George Lucas, of course. And so when this movie came out, this was just, when did Jurassic Park come out? I'm trying to think when digital effects started kind of coming into play.
Was it the same year?
I think it was. Let's see. Yeah, 93. Yeah, same 93. Year. So, but this movie is completely practical, and it holds up with all these 80s movies that I love, especially the ones involving aliens and things like that. It's simple. The use of light and the use of, I guess, wires. I would imagine wires, and all that it's so effective, and it still holds up, and it's kind of a testament to the argument between digital and practical. And I think for me, now if they're used together, they can both benefit each other. But at this time, especially in the 90s, once Jurassic Park hit, everyone was trying to do digital and with mixed results. And so this was before all that hit, and it looks great. It still holds up even today, which I think makes me realize that this film's going to stand the test of time. I think this is going to be a film that people will, young people especially, will start discovering and fall in love with this as well. But yeah, that scene, and then just the tension of it. You just feel the tension with all the characters. You've spent enough time with each character to kind of get how they would react. There's that tension between everybody. Should we go back? Shouldn't we go back? And then it goes from there. And then it kind of then the movie shifts and transitions into kind of more of a mystery, I guess, and a little bit of a police procedural, because we really don't know. We know as the audience what the hell went down, but no one else knows. And it does a good job, I think, of bringing you into that investigation, even though we've seen the abduction. But it does bring you into kind of, you almost wonder, is this a reliable narrator? You know what I mean? Is this a reliable narrative? Yeah. Did something really happen and we just haven't been shown it yet? And you get wrapped up in these characters, and it goes through that for quite a while. This isn't one of those movies that is trying to shock you with alien abduction, alien stuff every 10 minutes or whatever. It's a very patient film, and it takes you through this whole character arc and kind of mystery with once James Garner's character enters, trying to figure out what happened, and with the interrogations and the lie detector tests and all that. What did you think about that portion of the film once it transitions into there? Did it kind of hold your attention still? It now
did.
And then,
did.
Okay.
And I thought that it was a good call in that they didn't spend too much. They seemed to have enough confidence in that one scene, that one abduction sequence, in order to not linger there too much. Mm-hmm. And in making it kind of a melodrama and a partial police procedural, I think it rounded out the story a little better and kept it from being this one-note alien abduction story, by dealing with what's going on the ground as well as up in the air. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it did so well, it's mostly because I think of the cast. I think the cast is what really knocked it out of the park and sold that melodrama and sold the tension between all of these men. And even the supporting cast, the people in the town, selling that suspicion and that weird regarding of all of these men and that whole small town, that dark secrets in the small town feel that Stephen King made an entire career out of.
No, I do get kind of, and maybe it's just because Stephen King did spend so many books or his career, kind of unraveling the small town, but it did feel Stephen King-ish during some of those scenes. Definitely, I would get that feel from there.
Yeah, and Stephen King himself, he's not afraid to put some aliens in the end of his stories either.
Not at all.
So, I mean, the Stephen King comparison is totally an apt one.
So, a lot of people can think that this movie is just like an excuse to get to this alien abduction. And I think this is one of those films, it's been around for a while. We haven't spoiled the specifics, but definitely, it was even advertised, I believe, in the little write-ups and things. They did kind of hedge all their bets on this scene. And it's basically shown in I guess it would be a flashback, but it's his perception of what happened, or I guess. But gosh, where do we even start with that scene? I mean, it is still like one of the most impressive alien abduction creature work, just kind of the overall space that it feels way more expensive, I think, than it was.
Yeah. And
they do a really good job of, like I've said earlier, with wires, kind of giving you that feel of what, it's so realistic, and it's still mind-boggling that it holds up. What, do you remember, can you give me kind of a comparison of when you first saw it and then when you rewatched it kind of thing, or?
I can, because it was basically the same. When I first saw it as a kid, I was blown away. I was terrified of because they do show the aliens in this movie. At least, Travis Walton's, what he was able to see of the aliens. And even as an adult, I remember reading an interview with one of the makeup special effects artists that worked on this movie, and he had said that they didn't, when they were doing the aliens, they weren't too confident in the way they looked as a whole, and so they would try to kind of film them in the shadows and only show you quick glimpses of them. And I didn't get that vibe at all, that the aliens were subpar in any way. They terrified me as an adult, because I still found them really creepy and like little fetuses just running around. That's what they look like, little fetuses. with big old heads just running around. You remember that there was that Beavis and Butthead adjacent show with that guy with the big head?
Oh, yes.
And he had like the veins sticking out of his forehead. I think it was a name like Big Head or something like that. That's what they remind me of.
Interesting.
And, but it was much scarier. They had little beady eyes. It was far scarier. But from a technical standpoint, I think that the DP was Bill Pope. And his eye for panoramics and these neutral rural palettes. There were no like bright colors in this movie at all. It's pretty amazing when you consider how well he instills a sense of paranoia into those shots, especially in the abduction sequence. Not the first one where Walton is abducted, but when he wakes up and has this festival of horrors inside of the alien pod, wherever they are. There's a heavy sense of paranoia, both inside of the ship and on the ground in the small town. And I thought that was really cool how Bill Pope was able to make both of those things happen, both in the air and on the ground. So I think technically the movie still holds up very well.
Yeah, it looks great, and it's from his perspective, and he kind of wakes up
right
in this room, and I love seeing those alien spacesuits that he kind of floats up to. It's so creepy and effective, and it gives you a good sense of what your imagination is still going. You're like, oh, well, what the hell is going to go in there? Like, what am I about to see?
What are they going to do with that thing?
Right. Yeah. And, and then I just love the dread of him waking up, not knowing where he is. You can get this sense of disgust when he puts his hand into something slimy. I mean, it's just like, and doesn't he end up in like, a half decomposed corpse somehow?
See, I didn't know how much of the scene you wanted to like go into, but I have this entire breakdown of how horrifying this scene was for me as a kid. But yes, that is one of the parts, and it is a half decomposed. It looks like a human.
Yeah, no, yeah, or something, and
right. Robert Lieberman is going for like pure terror here, and he fully succeeds.
Which surprises me that he didn't just jump into horror, because it's like the direction of, I mean, he, like I said, he did some science fiction TV, but he never attempted like a horror feature length film. I don't know if he just got comfortable and just got gigs and just kept on working, which could happen. I mean, he has probably has a family to take care of and everything, and but yeah, he never really jumped into horror. I'm curious what X-Files episodes he directed, because I guess he would have had that little playground there, with X-Files. But
yeah, and part of the terror in this abduction sequence is that he doesn't explain. Nothing is explained in those few minutes. Nothing at all. You have as much information as Travis Walton does.
Yeah.
And you're running on the same amount of information, so there's a lot of like what the fuckery going on in these scenes, which adds to the terror. Like I guess if we're gonna run through it, he wakes up in like
might as well. Look,
pod.
Here we go.
Spoiler alert.
If you don't want to be spoiled with Fire in the Sky, pause the podcast right now, watch Fire in the Sky, and then come back. We're near the end. We probably got, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes left. And come back and finish. But we need to talk about the scene, because there's so much going on with it that it would be a shame to just not talk about it. But I think at this time, maybe a lot of people, I don't know. This is one of those movies that I feel like a lot of people still haven't seen, and it's kind of still,
right. The spoiler alert. That's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So spoiler alert. And then now let's break this shit down.
Okay, so Travis wakes up in a pod of sorts. It looks kind of like H.R. Giger-ish, this whole setup. Actually, it looks a lot like the pods in the Matrix, in the walls. By the way, Bill Pope, the DP for this film, was also the cinematographer for the Matrix.
I was just about to Google Bill Pope and see like what has he done? Because the Matrix was a few years later, right?
Yeah. I want to say that was. Well, gosh, was it? Was it like 90? It couldn't have been as late as 97.
That was 99. Yeah, 99. So
99.
But definitely, he took some things from Fire in the Sky and
there was definitely a similar aesthetic there.
Yeah.
And so, Travis wakes up in this pod and he finagles his way out of it to find that the rules of physics are a little different in this new domain he's in. He's floating around. And by the way, the camera work here is pretty sweet. Without spoiling too much about the sequence, well, we're spoiling the whole sequence, but the POV at some points has like this hovering, free-floating effect that's totally seamless. There's no bumps, no shakes of the camera. It's all surreal, very womb-like suspension. And then on top of that, the set pieces here are phenomenal. Like there's like I said, H.R. Geiger level biomechanics, but it's a little more, I guess, minimalist. A little more earthy. I think the earth tones have something to do with that. It's not like this dark gray like you would see on in the Alien movies.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that if it definitely feels there's the lived in feel, but I feel like a lot of modern kind of science fiction things are a little too shiny and too clean.
Yeah.
I love the dirty, grimy, spaceship. And
organic.
Yeah. And then they nail that in this film.
Yeah. And so a series of unfortunate events befall poor Travis, and it ratchets up the horror for the rest of us. And then the aliens roll up, and then we're really cooking with peanut oil at this point. I do believe Industrial Light and Magic was the company that worked on this movie, and they came up with these nasty looking little Benjamin Button looking fetuses on stork legs. They're all these really skinny little legs. That's the best way I can describe them. And the mechanics are a little stiff here and there, but this was 1993. This was made with practical effects in 1993.
Yeah, I like that more than like fully fluid CG creation, and maybe that's just because I'm a child of the 80s. You know what I mean? I'm used to seeing that, but. There's just something about it where it just feels, especially something like this, like a little more terrifying. The way they kind of slam the apparatus into his mouth, and you know what I mean? The way they're kind of moving things is just this kind of like they're not being insanely careful, but they're surgical. Like there's surgical stuff going on, but they're not being too careful, so it kind of even makes it a little more tense. I don't know if that's unintentional. He's being treated like an animal being tested upon. Yeah. And so it's definitely I guess the mechanics do kind of figure into that. It does make it a little more jarring. They are ugly and they are mean little guys, and they put this poor guy through the ringer during the examination part of the sequence. There's an examination part, and it's like a portion of the alien abduction stories that we've all heard and made probing jokes about, but I did not laugh during any of these moments. No. Like if you've ever seen Cronenberg's Dead Ringers and recoiled at some of those medical instruments that Jeremy Irons is waving around in that movie, you're going to have a ball with the mouse-ka-tools that they pull out in this movie. They vacuum seal this guy. He's screaming the whole time, and they vacuum seal him to a table. And then they shove this, it's like this brown liquid Vegemite that they put in and around his mouth, which I guess it's to make him more comfortable. I guess that's the humane treatment, I guess. Yeah, it's they're greasing up, they're lubing him up.
It was so gross. They put this in and around his mouth. He is screaming the entire 4 minutes of this sequence, by the way. They shove this into his mouth. And then they shove this it's like a roto-rooter down his throat. And they put this Clockwork Orange ass looking eyelid spreader over one eye. And I guess maybe that was to make the process more humane, because maybe there were complaints in the past, a whole investigation into the ethical practices of the Benjamin Button aliens. But it was, now they have the Vegemite lube. And the Vegemite lube does absolutely nothing, because they bring this jousting lance of a needle out, for further experimentation. They put it into like right next to his eye, and I think at some point they actually put it into his eye, but they don't show that part. I think it's implied. But the needle is what gave me nightmares as a kid. I would love to say that it traumatized me so much that I have a phobia of needles now, but I have like 13 tattoos on my body, so
that's different. No, that's different. No, I got tattoo. I've a tattoo. I'm not as awesome and cool as you are, but yeah, I don't like needles, like shots, but I've I do want to get more ink work done.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of that, but you get a needle and a syringe or whatever and want to fill it with liquid and plunge it in my body. I'm not going to like that.
Yeah, and there's this POV shot of this needle coming straight down at the screen, and that was enough to make me wake up in a cold sweat for weeks on end. It was horrible. My mom just let me sit through it. She didn't make me leave the room or nothing. She was just sitting there smiling.
Making you strong. This is going to make my daughter strong. She's going to appreciate this one day. Right.
And the creatures are just so ugly that we can only shy away in fear. But that whole examination sequence is, even though we've heard those stories before, those have been told by countless UFOlogists, and alleged abductees. Even though we've heard those kinds of stories, this sequence is still incredibly frightening and invasive. It's a very invasive scene, and I think that scene makes the movie.
Definitely, yeah, definitely, and it all feels cohesive to the story, and like I said, it's not like we're going through a bunch of bullshit just to get to this crazy intense scene. Right. What I read was, so back to how they changed, the story. I guess the screenwriter, Tracy Torme, said that the executives were the ones that had a problem with Walton's abduction story. Like once he got to the spaceship, they were like, "Yeah, this is kind of boring." I guess like he gets to fly this in the book. He says he flies the spaceship, and then, it's just kind of not. He's like, this isn't scary enough. So they're like, I guess they told the script writer to like just go nuts and bring us something fucked up. So Tracy Torme did.
Yeah, she definitely went there. And wait, he?
I'm looking that up Tracy. Right now.
God, I don't want to misgender
It's a he.
Someone. It's
Tracy
a he. Okay.
Is a he. Mm-hmm.
Tracy. Well, he wrote, from what I'm seeing here, he wrote several episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation. He wrote. He was a writer on Carnival, Sliders, and it looks like he was an SNL writer from 82 to 83. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, he really let fly on this one scene.
Because this is like everything terrifying. Like anything anyone finds terrifying is in this short. Like, is it about 10 minutes or is it less? It's a short scene, but it is like you get a bang for your buck in this scene.
Yeah, you do. God, I don't want to oversell it though.
I know.
I'm going to be expecting this masterpiece. It was, but I don't know.
It's a fucking good scene, everybody. It is. You got to respect it. You definitely need to respect it. But that's the thing. Like when with the critical reception of this film, it sounds like everyone loved that scene, and I guess Roger Ebert loved the scene in the craft, inside the craft. He didn't like the ending, so he says that because of the ending, it was a bit frustrating for him. But
yeah,
because it is kind of an anticlimactic ending.
It is, and I guess that was their way of trying to keep true to the story. Travis Walton's story, but I felt like they could have done something with it. It waddles back and forth between small town drama and that real deal Holyfield sci-fi horror, but I feel like the arcs didn't really go anywhere by the end of the film. There wasn't
right. Right.
Yeah,
all the arcs.
Yeah,
the character arcs I think are kind of set up at the beginning with all the character dynamics between everybody. It kind of, they could have at least, like, they did all this. They changed up the story for the abduction scene. They could have at least put a nice bow on it with it, just kind of, but yeah, they kind of just. But I guess maybe that's how life is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess so.
You go through a traumatic experience like this, and then everyone just kind of goes their separate ways. And but yeah, no, it does end up anticlimactically, and Robert Patrick kind of has a really bad wig at the end. That's the one costume problem I have. I think is the end of the film where he's been living in this cabin, and he's supposed to be, his hair's grown out and everything.
No problem with the Chuck E. Cheese level animatronics with the aliens, but
no, the wig.
Robert
the
Patrick's wig is gotta
go. I'm weird like that for some reason, but yeah. So one other thing I wanted to bring up too is there's another great frantic kind of tense scene when they are searching, when they find out, when Robert Patrick, I think he gets the phone call, right? And
yes.
they go out and they're searching for him in the rain, and they find him, and he's only lit with the headlights of the car, but he's completely naked, and it's just, that's a shocking, well done scene. Like, there's so many amazing little vignettes, of tension in this film. Surrounded by this melodrama, and I think that if you appreciate kind of a story that is patient and kind of takes its time setting things up, I definitely think you'll get a lot out of this. And then there's enough little jolts here and there that will, appease that genre side of you. But overall, thoughts on Fire in the Sky?
Overall, I think if you want to chomp on some popcorn and get in some good scares with a decent amount of dread thrown in and some really cool visuals, you can dig in on this one even if you didn't see it as a kid. When I talked about this film on Twitter, someone commented that the movie would have been best as a short film leading up to and including the abduction sequence and the examination scene. And I have to say that I agree. I think it would have actually worked better as a short film.
That's interesting.
Right. But I still think overall this film is worth a watch or worth a revisit if you saw it back in the day like I did.
Yeah, definitely. This one still holds up. It is. It's available in HD on Vudu, or I guess any streaming platform. It's not on Blu-ray or anything, and it's on DVD, but it looks pretty good in HD streaming. So definitely at least give it a rent and check it out. It was on Netflix for a while. I'm not sure if it still is. It was in 2017. It was on Netflix, so you might want to check Netflix or Hulu and see if it's there. But yeah, no, I really love this flick. I think that if you're a science fiction fan, an alien abduction fan, there's a lot to chew on here. That's interesting about the short film. If it was a short film, I'm kind of torn on that. I don't know, because there's a lot that I do like as far as the character work and the mystery part of it. But I can totally see that, and I'm wondering if it was a short film, if the ending would be a little more of a payoff, because I feel like we have invested a lot in these characters, and we don't get a big payoff, I guess, with them. They don't tie up the loose ends of the characters, I guess, enough for I guess a common theatrical narrative. But yeah, no, I'm a fan. Check it out. I'll make sure I put links to the streaming in the show notes and spread the word. I think this is one of those films that for some reason has never really ascended the heights of, on people's lists. And I think people just maybe haven't got around to seeing it, but I definitely think that it's something worth paying attention to.
Right. Right. When I talked about it on Twitter, I got a whole bunch of people up in my comments saying, "Oh man, I saw that film when I was a kid too," and it messed me up for weeks, for months.
Cool, okay.
And so I think that the audience is definitely there for it, and maybe it'll get kind of a resurgence like Halloween 3 or any of the other films that we now
or
hold
Halloween
as
6. That was your
Halloween
chance.
6, yes. Films that we now hold as beloved classics. See, that's it. See, the Halloween 6 isn't yet a beloved classic, but it will be when my work is done.
We'll keep chipping away.
Exactly.
It will reach its plate. The producer's cut? Is that what?
The producer's cut. Yeah, we don't talk about the theatrical cut.
Right. The producer's cut available on from Screen Factory.
Yeah.
I'll have an Amazon affiliate link in the show notes for all of you if you guys want.
The 5 people that want to buy that Blu-ray.
Oh man, that's great. Yes, everyone, check this out, and I think that wraps up Fire in the Sky. Did you have any last words on Fire in the Sky, or I think we've thoroughly.
No, I think we covered it. It's worth a revisit. You should watch the movie, and if you have an 8-year-old who likes horror or is inclined towards it, go ahead and traumatize them and let them watch this movie. And, turn out the lights and turn up the volume and just be ready to pay for their therapy for the next couple of years.
Oh, I don't know. Look at. Read your kid. You know what your kid's into. You know what will traumatize them, what won't. And as a parent, don't be like the crazy uncle just throwing this on for like, if your niece or nephew is just hanging out.
Right.
Maybe, talk to the parents a little bit. But if you're a parent like myself and you see your kids kind of dabbling in horror and sci-fi, and like my daughter and my son just finally, he's 11 and he just finally saw It, and he had trouble sleeping that night, but he's
the new one.
Yeah, he's dipping his toe into the horror. He didn't
what
want
a way
to
dip your toe into it.
He fought it for a long time, and my daughter convinced him to watch it.
Oh boy.
So, but yeah, feel it out. But yeah, this is definitely on my list for a good introductory genre film for your little Rugrats.
Yeah. My oldest, you definitely have to know your kid, because my oldest, he can handle slashers. He's 10. Mm-hmm. But that's only because he is really into makeup effects and special effects, and trying to figure out, like the way a kid would watch a magician over and over again to try and figure out how the trick works. Yeah. And so that's why he's into slashers. And so if your kid is not into that, maybe don't show them Nightmare on Elm Street,
Yeah. You're raising a little Tom Savini for sure.
That's kind of, it looks like that's where he's going. That's where he's headed. He's learning about, it's educational. He is learning about human anatomy.
Yeah.
He's learning about, synthetics and prosthetics and how things work. And it's actually
Science
pretty cool
and
to watch
chemistry.
him. He is, because we can't afford, we can't afford like the fancy stuff to make a life cast or anything like that. He has to figure out and Google things and learn how these chemicals and materials work with next to each other. And so, it does force some education.
Very nice. We may have to start a side project, raising genre-loving kids with Anya and Sean.
Yeah, exactly. There would be fodder for it every single week. We have Fright Night Friday weekly. Nice.
Well, Anya Stanley, thank you for spending some time with me and talking about Fire in the Sky. And when I was thinking about this, you immediately came to mind, because you have been a champion of this film now and then. And when I saw your Twitter feed explode when you mentioned it, I was like, yeah, it's time. It's time to cover this film.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on.
Where can people find you? And you are working, I guess it's a long time coming, but you are working on a book. You've been involved in some books. So if you can takes a little bit of time and let us know where we can find your writing and what you're working on and all that stuff.
In general, you can find my writing on anyawrites.com, ANYA-writes.com. And that's where I have all of my film reviews and links to my past column at Daily Grindhouse, where I would watch, I was going through all of the video nasties. I still am, and I'm doing that for a book right now in which I go through all of the core 72 video nasties. And talk about those video nasties that were banned in England in the 80s for a while. And so that's in progress right now. But I do have a chapter coming out in a book called Scared Sacred about religious horror and religion in horror. Ooh. And yeah, that's coming from House of Leaves Publishing. And they just started a crowdfunding campaign for that. And so I have a chapter on H.P. Lovecraft and the inherent atheism that comes across in his writing and in his stories and even in movie adaptations of his work.
Very nice. You may have to be a guest on the Armchair Philosopher in October because I'm planning a spooky month, and that might be ripe for discussion.
Lovecraft?
Lovecraft and atheism and all that stuff. In that
Absolutely.
Chapter. Do you think you can cover like an hour with that subject?
Oh, easily. I had to cover a whole chapter.
Yeah, fuck yeah, we're doing it. Okay, you heard it here first, folks. This isn't the first. You've been on the Screamcast and stuff like that. I mean, this ain't your first rodeo on a screamingpods.com show. Awesome. Anything else?
No, that's about it. I do have a column on Dread Central, a gender bashing column. It's called Gender Bashing.
Oh, yes. God damn it. That's such a great column. I love it so much.
I look at horror films from a gendered perspective. I talk about toxic masculinity. I talk about catfighting and cliques between girls in high school and the teen slasher films, all kinds of stuff. Changes every month. Sometimes we have a themed month. Sometimes we're actually pushing for a dick month at Dread Central, but the editor, Jonathan Barkan, he will not go for it. But we're wearing him down.
Well, yeah, I'll bug him as well. I will definitely bug Jonathan. We need to have Dick Month.
He's going to yell at me in the Slack. He's totally going to yell at me. That's okay.
Awesome. Well, fantastic. Yeah, that column is great. So everyone go read that column. Read the comments.
Because I don't.
She is pushing some toxic masculinity buttons and is glorious. But you've received some shit from some people. And that's something that we'll bring up when you and I talk for Armchair Philosopher for sure. We'll bring up some toxic masculinity and stuff like that. Some of the shit that you've had to deal with because look, guys, don't be assholes.
It's a general rule of the internet.
Even if you don't agree with an article or whatever, just don't be an asshole. I don't understand why it's so hard. So, but check out the column. It's great. The one I'm thinking of is when you wrote on Predator and
men were not happy about that.
Some dude bros did not like that article.
Right, I shouldn't say all men. It was like straight white dude bro men that were very upset with me.
The dudes that live on protein shakes and creatine.
Yeah, they thought I was dogging on the movie, and I was not. I love that movie, but they did not appreciate the critiques.
What? And I got that from that. I mean, that article is plain as day that you love the film. I don't understand. All right. Well, we can talk forever, and we better wrap it up because we're just going to start talking shop now. And we'll stop before we do that. So thank you all for listening to Xenopod from the year 5000. I am Sean DeRager. Your guest has been Anya Stanley. Anya, thank you so much again for joining me. And I guess we'll talk to all of you next time.